Dear learners, let's have a glance on the important works of Muhammad Abdul. Though there are numerous works that has been done by Muhammad Abdul. For example, I have already mentioned Al-Urwatul Wusqa, which he had edited along with Sayyid Jamaluddin Afghani, to whom he admired while he was studying at Jamia Al-Azhar. And apart from that one, he had just played an important role in writing the tafsir. And that tafsir is entitled as Tafsir al-Manar. Manar was a magazine that was started by Muhammad Abdul along with his disciple Rashid Rida. Later it was Rashid Rida who became the main editor after the demise of Muhammad Abdul. And it was Rashid Rida who associated himself with Muhammad Abdul. And in the editorial, in the write-ups, Muhammad Abdul had written the commentary of the Holy Quran. And the very first thing that he has done, he started writing tafsir from Surah Al-Fatiha and up to Surah Al-Nisa. The first task he has done was he started writing tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha up to Surah Al-Nisa. And through his tafsir, he started interpreting the verses of the Holy Quran as per the modern requirement. And in the modern, how it can be understood and implemented, or the teaching of the Quran should be implemented. It was single-handedly he wrote the tafsir of Surah Fatiha up to Surah. Then it was his disciple, his student Rashid Rida. Along with him, he also continued writing some more tafsir of other verses. And from after completing Surah Fatiha up to Surah Yusuf, he wrote the commentary along with his disciple Rashid Rida. Though we found that he couldn't complete the whole Quran. He didn't complete the interpretation of the whole Quran, the paras, the 30 juz. And it was because of in the later year, he had a very bad health also. And finally, he also died. This resulted into the end of the work of tafsir writing. And there were many other obstacles he has faced. Somehow it was the political obstacles. For many times he has to leave his native land also. This was also a hurdle. And as I have mentioned, it was his death also that has further resulted into or compelling him to only write up to Surah Yusuf. Now discussing what was the background. After all, what was the reason behind writing Tafsir al-Manar? What we found that it was Muhammad Abdul's desire to present a Quranic interpretation that was relevant to the challenges of the modern time, and as well as were able to answer various social, political, and religious issues that were faced by the Muslim of the 19th century. This was his desire. Though he was aware about the classical tafsir work, even then, though the classical tafsir work of great repute were very important, the masterpieces, even then, because he considered in the modern times, there are many questions that the Muslims are encountering on the various aspects, like the social aspect, like the political aspect, like the religious aspect. So it should be answered, it should be addressed in a newer way, with a newer understanding, citing example from the modern things, whatsoever were prevalent at that time in the society. Further, what we found that it was Muhammad Abduhu who emphasized the importance of rationality, social reform, and contextual understanding of the Quranic text through his writing, interpreting the Quran. It should be rationally interpreted. Rational thinking has an importance because through rational thinking, many new views and thought can be addressed. And by this way, they can understand it very well. And that will, for the social reform, to reform the society, to implement the social reform, newer interpretation are needed. For the Quranic text, it should be so that people could understand that the Quran is for all time. And it can be interpreted and understood as per the need and requirement of the time. So this was the emphasis of Muhammad Abduh. That's why he started his work of writing Tafsir al-Manar. What we found that Muhammad Abduh and his disciple, his student, Rashid Raza, they tried to criticize stagnant religious practices. That those are almost obsolete, these practices. They criticize. No need to accept that. Leaving these things. And on the other hand, they encourage Muslims to return to the pure and dynamic teaching of Islam. That they should learn the Holy Quran. They should try to understand the Holy Quran in their own way, in their own manner. Then they can be firm on their faith also. Many social issues and problems can be solved by that one. This was his approach. His Tafsir al-Manar, the Tafsir al-Manar of Muhammad Abduh, also served as a medium to spread the ideas of renewal and the formation of a more progressive and inclusive Islamic thought. Through Tafsir al-Manar, while expressing or giving his own opinion, he considered it as a medium to spread the ideas, his own ideas, of the renewal and the formation of more progressive and inclusive Islamic thought that were in line with the spirit of the renewal, which Muhammad Abduh had promoted to his followers. He advocated to his followers that they should accept this thing. They should consider this way. This is the thing. Further, we can say, regarding or discussing about the issue of ijtihad in Tafsir al-Manar, or issue of jihad in Tafsir al-Manar, first of all, he tried to understand what was the preconceived notion. That the verse of jihad in the Holy Quran are countless, are numerous, are many verses. And each verses have a different context. It should be considered on different manner, covering the spiritual one, the moral one, the social one, and the military one. But the classical scholars, they interpreted jihad, and their focus was that it was a physical or a military struggle in defense of Islam. Their jihad was the physical and the military struggle in defense of Islam. If any sort of attack is on Islam and the Muslim, then jihad has to be performed. This was the view of the classical scholars. But Muhammad Abduhu adopted many modern ideas in the interpretation of the words of jihad. What he found that jihad is not only limited to the physical warfare, but it is more as an internal struggle against the lust and injustice. Because we human are lustful also. And this jihad, if we will do jihad by our own self, with our lust and the injustice which we are doing or we are receiving, it should be accepted in this way. That's why we used to say that the best jihad is jihad with nafs, the jihad of the inner self, controlling oneself from any sort of error and the wrong thing to come within us. Further, what we find that according to Muhammad Abduhu, jihad should be understood as a continuous effort. It is not the temporary effort, it's a continuous effort to improve oneself and as well as the society. And to promote the values of justice, morality and education. That he considered that the jihad should be understood in this way also. Because at every moment, every manner, we should be in the stage of jihad. First of all, improving ourselves, improving our health, improving our life, improving our environment, improving our educational structures, improve our living standard, caring about the other people. This is a part of a jihad. And just because of this one, this jihad promotes the value of justice, morality and education. That how much it is important. Jihad doesn't mean that only to fight with anyone. No. It has very limited approach. This. Further, we find that the views of Muhammad Abduhu was an attempt to respond to the challenges of modern time by emphasizing the importance of social and spiritual reform in Islam. What we find, his tafsir invite people to understand jihad in a broader and more relevant context. When he started talking about the jihad in his tafsir, many scholars tried to understand what is his perspective and how he is explaining jihad in a very different manner. It was Muhammad Abduhu that the jihad should be integrated with Islamic principles with scientific advances and as well as the contemporary social dynamics. So this had approach. Now after him, many scholars had tried to undertake the work in the line and the parameters of the work of Muhammad Abdul. They also started explaining the jihad, the meaning of the jihad, the sense of the jihad, that where it should be implemented in a rightful manner. This is that. We can say that the thinking of Muhammad Abduhu paved way for the more inclusive and progressive understanding of the concept of jihad. Later, it inspired the renewal of the movement in the Islamic world. Many movement was inspired by his views on jihad. A very smooth movement had started. No violent movement. Very smooth and progressive movement. That they are fighting for the cause, for the welfare of the people, without indulging into the physical fight also. Through debate, through interacting, through putting forward their demands. These were the parameters of jihad that Muhammad Abduhu has thought over, and the later movements had adopted this principle of jihad of Muhammad Abduhu. Another important work of Muhammad Abduhu is Risalat Tawheed, a magazine of Tawheed, a journal of Tawheed. It is a significant work in which Muhammad Abduhu explores the concept of monotheism in Islam. He tried to explain, tried to explore what the original concept of the monotheism, the Tawheed in Islam, emphasizing the oneness of Allah Almighty as the central tenet of the faith. This was the thing. The text of Risalat Tawheed delves into the philosophical underpinnings of Tawheed, that arguing and understanding the God's unity in essential. For a true comprehension of Islamic teaching principles and practices. It means he argued that understanding God's unity is essential. Then we can much more understand the Islamic teaching and practices and as well as principles also. Muhammad Abduhu was a critic, greatest critic of the various interpretations of Islam that he believed distorted the essence of Tawheed. He was categorically very critical about that. Just because of the misconceptions, the Tawheed is wrongly interpreted and it has got distorted also. And just because of that, many Muslims had got deviated from that one also. He further advocated for a rational approach to religious belief that aligns with modern scientific understandings. Muhammad Abduhu himself had highlighted the importance of reason and intellect in interpreting religious text, as well as suggesting that the blind faith can lead to misunderstanding and misapplication of Islamic principles. That's why through Tawheed, Risala Tawheed, he was saying that we should not blindly accept whatever the thing is prevailing in our custom, because it is leading us to going astray. It is leading us to make us unbelievers. That's why he had emphasized on the importance of reason and intellect in the interpretation of religious texts. The work of Muhammad Abdul also addresses the relationship between the religion and morality. Religion is totally based on morality. And he has tried to find out the relationship between religion and morality through his work, Risalat Tawheed. He was of the opinion for the better and asserting that a proper understanding of Tawheed lead to ethical behavior and social justice. Muhammad Abduhu emphasized the need for reform within the Muslim community. He was constantly advocating, writing, and debating that it is a need of a time that the reform should be brought in the Muslim community. Calling for the return to the original teaching, as we have already stated. Then, because of this one, it will promote unity and it will further discourage the sectarian division, the sect division of the Muslims within the sect. While advocating for pan-Islamism, along with Sayyid Jamaluddin Afghani, their view was to bridge gap, to call the Muslim on the common issue, common platform. Whatsoever their opinion, their views, their thought are on regarding their sect, he said it should be left aside. It should be kept aside. It is the Tawheed, the original teaching of Islam, that is promoting unity, that is calling to get united, that we all are the adherents of Allah, adherents of God, who is only one. And we have to follow what Allah has ordained us, commanded us through the Holy Quran. Further, the text of the Risala Tawheed also serve as a response to the challenges posed by the Western thought and colonialism, encouraging Muslims to engage with modernity while remaining rooted in their faith. It was against the Western thought and colonialism. I think despite that one, we have to be firm on our faith. We should engage ourselves in the modern approaches. It doesn't mean we should leave our faith. No. We should remain deeply rooted, connected to our faith. This is the thing. Further, through this writing, The style he has adopted was accessible, making complex theological concepts easier to understand to the broader audience, which was part of his goal to educate and inspire reform. Then we can say Risalat Tawheed of Muhammad Abduhu had a lasting impact on the Islamic thought. It has influenced all the later scholars and the movements that seek to reconcile faith with contemporary issues. In last, we can say that the work is to call to the action for Muslims to embrace a rational and ethical approach. His work, Risalat Tawheed, was a call to action for Muslims to embrace a rational and ethical approach to their faith, and as well as fostering a deeper understanding of Tawheed and its implication for personal and communal life. Thank you very much.